A playoff game should feel different. Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon just doesn't give me the feel that I'm looking for, especially on an 86-degree day. Normally, we're in the NBA Finals right now, and instead, we are playing second-round games in the first week of June. It is what it is. There he is, Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com. Sixers Insider at Paul Hudrick. All right, man, here we go. Sunday at 1, the tip-off right here. Trae Young, almost 30 points a game against the Sixers. His scoring average is right around that against the Knicks, who are a very good defensive team. So who gets that call for Doc Rivers?
I would think initially Ben Simmons, but at the same time, it's tough because what Trae Young does really well, and something that we've seen Joel Embiid do really well throughout the season, is he gets people in foul trouble. So that would be my only fear in starting Ben Simmons immediately right on Trae Young. But the issue is, and the only other option you really have in that case for the starters is Danny Green. And Danny Green is solid, but a guy like Trae Young, that's a terrible matchup for him, just flat out. It really is. Trae's way too quick, and in the pick and roll, I don't really love it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot that Doc's kind of in. My guess would be Ben gets him from the jump. In that case, Ben's got to be really careful with fouls. It's crazy, Mike, because I felt like the Wizards series, that was really tightly called for a playoff series. So I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe round 2, maybe it tightens up a little bit and they let him play a little bit more, and that could be to the Sixers' advantage. But, yeah, if I had to guess today, I would assume it's Ben Simmons.
Then if Ben Simmons is used on Trae Young, who is used on Clint Capella?
My guess would be, I mean, if Joel Embiid is out, you almost have to start Dwight Howard in this case, just because I don't think that's a good matchup to go. You could get away with it with the Wizards because the Wizards didn't have – I mean, Gafford, I like Gafford a lot, but he's not the same type of player as Capella is. Capella's big. He's strong. He is a lob threat as well. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could conceivably do the small ball lineup. I don't know if that's what's going to work, though, against a guy like Clint Capella. I would maybe lean towards going Dwight Howard, but if that's the case and they want to go small, then, yeah, I mean, Danny Green almost has to cover Trae Young, and, either Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris is going to have to guard Clint Capella. So it's going to be a lot of interesting moving parts. I think Doc's going to have to feel it out. And I think, to Doc's credit, I think he did feel out the Wizards series pretty well. Now, granted, he had just a better flat-out personnel. I still think he has the better flat-out personnel, but the gap is much less significant. And then if Joel Embiid is not in the lineup, then it's close to being even.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, because if you're using Ben as your 5, like you did on Wednesday night, you used him in that center role. But you're right. They don't really have a guy to match up with Trae Young. And by the way, Simmons, as you mentioned, is not – this is where the one area where he kind of has a little bit of struggles is against smaller, quicker guys sometimes. A guy like Young who will pull up from just about anywhere. He can put the ball on the floor and go by you quickly. He's got a great burst. So this is they got an interesting conundrum with that. And as you mentioned, with playing Dwight Howard potentially in the starter role, your offense is now compromised.
Right. No, 100%. The Ben Simmons, Dwight Howard combination has not fared well on offense. And this Atlanta team is a much better defensive team than the Wizards are. And they're going to present tougher matchups. Tobias Harris one of Tobias Harris or Ben Simmons is going to have a much tougher matchup that they're going to have to go up against offensively. John Collins isn't a very good defender, but DeAndre Hunter is a pretty good defender. So one of them is going to get DeAndre Hunter. My guess would be Tobias. I don't know that, though. So that's not as easy as a matchup. Up and down the lineup, Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris could pick and choose mismatches all day with that Wizards roster. It's simply not going to be the case against the Hawks. It's going to be a little bit tougher. But, yeah, I mean, and with Trae Young, it's almost like, to me, I would actually prefer him to be a scorer. I'm okay with him scoring 30 points a night. What I'm more concerned about is him as a playmaker and him getting the other guys going and involved. I almost think, in a way, you have to kind of let him get his and then try to just kind of stop everyone else down. With that said, Trae Young's capable of scoring 50 points in a game and doing it by himself. So it's a really precarious situation you find yourself in when you have such a dangerous offensive player like Trae Young. And the other thing is, Mike, I think they got to make him work on defense. I don't know what that's going to look like, whether it's running him through screens or trying to get him isolated on Seth Curry, who showed that he can pick on, smaller defenders and get by them. So that to me is the biggest thing. They have to find a way to make Trae Young work on the defensive end.
All right, let's look at the defensive end. How do they match up with Ben Simmons? Who gets that call? Because one problem that Washington had is they got a 6'2" guy a lot of times matched up with Ben Simmons because they just don't have the size or personnel, and he's able to back his way down, get to where he wants, brings a double, kick out three, one-on-one with a shorter guy, get all the way to the basket, layup. How does that work in this series with Atlanta?
Yeah, so Atlanta's going to have a tough decision to make as well. Like I said, with Tobias or Ben, who does DeAndre Hunter get? Who does John Collins get? Because in my opinion, whichever player John Collins gets, that's the player that's going to have the advantage. I don't think John Collins can handle Ben Simmons' quickness and his strength, and I don't think he can handle Tobias Harris' strength in the post. I think we saw that in the regular season when what Tobias Harris has done so well all year long is just using that that functional strength to get to his spots on the floor where he likes to shoot and hitting shots. So either guy is going to have they're going to have to make a tough decision there as well with Atlanta. And like I said, with Trae Young, my guess would be they're going to try to hide him on Danny Green. So then it's up to Danny Green to just run him ragged, run him all around the court, make really good, smart cuts, which Danny Green does, and also just get him involved. Maybe use Danny Green as a screener to try to get Trae Young, switch onto a Ben Simmons or as a Tobias Harris and try to create mismatches that way. So, it's not going to be even without Joel Embiid, it's not going to be an easy defensive matchup for Atlanta either. Then when you get into their bench and you got guys like Lou Williams and Gallinari, they're not good defenders. So, they're going to have opportunities to exploit guys. So it's going to be up to Doc Rivers to figure out ways to do it. And it's going to be up to the Sixers players to take advantage when they do get those matchups.
Hey, you asked Doc the other night if he thought about starting Tyrese Maxey, and he said not at all. Was that just for that series, or do you think that's an option in this series?
I think what Doc likes, he didn't say specifically, but I think what Doc likes is the idea of bringing in Tyrese for that energy. Because you need that kind of like when you did a bench guy that's just going to come in and give you some life. And I think he likes Tyrese from that standpoint. So I think that's why he didn't use him to start. I will say, and we've talked about this before, Mike, it really does not matter who starts games. It matters who finishes games. And Tyrese Maxey finished game 5. So I think that's the thing that's more important. I think I can't speak for Doc Rivers, but I think the idea behind wanting Thibault in the starting lineup was for strictly because of Bradley Beal. He wanted Matisse to be able to match up with Bradley Beal and then allow Ben Simmons to do some other things. What we kind of started off talking about was that the fact that, if the Sixers are going to do that, if they're going to go small, Thibault might be the best matchup again, because you can put Thibault on Trae Young, and maybe you put Ben Simmons on Capella in that standpoint. It's not ideal, but that might be your best option. I worry in that case about rim protection, Trae Young getting all the way to the basket. You saw the Wizards kind of exploit that early on. The second half, they did a much better job with that small ball lineup. I thought their help and their rotations, the way they kind of trapped Bradley Beal and then the way they rotated around it, I thought they did a tremendous job. It's not going to be as easy because the sporting cast is much better here. But if they can do what they did kind of in the second half of Game 5, the team defense they played against Bradley Beal and the Wizards, that would bode very well if they're able to pull that off.
Give me your thoughts, Paul, on realistically Joel Embiid's availability in this series.
I don't want to sound like too optimistic.
What is they put him out in the court the other night to shoot around. There's a message there, is there not?
Maybe for Joel. Yeah, for Joel himself, wanted to show everyone, hey, my leg didn't fall off. Like, I'm still here. And look, Mike, he moved fine. I didn't notice him favoring it. Clearly, it was not. The one big thing is you notice there was no contact whatsoever, which, of course, there shouldn't be. But yeah, that was the one thing that was noticeably different. But other than that, his warm-up routine was pretty much the same. He's taking all the same shots. He's dribbling. He's moving. He's coming to stops. He's jumping up and down. So, from that standpoint, he looked okay. He looked mostly like himself. So to me, there's so much variance in that, like the torn meniscus. And when they say small, It's so hard to know. Like you could have and I've seen, plenty of medical people say it, and I have a very smart medical person that I happen to live with. And the meniscus tear, it ranges so much. It depends on where. It depends on the size. It depends on so many different things in that area of the knee. There are guys it's possible you could have a torn meniscus and not even know it. You just feel like maybe a little click or a little sore in your knee, but you're not an NBA basketball player, so you don't get MRIs and stuff at your disposal. So he played 4 minutes, Mike, after after that fall on that collision with Lopez. So that not that that's a big indicator. There's adrenaline, there's all that, but it's really there's so many variables with that kind of injury. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays game 1. Now, I also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play game 1 or game. Like, I don't know. Like, it's so up in the air. But I think you will see him in this series. I don't know when, but I would be surprised if you don't see him at all. I think he plays in this series.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's one of those things where let's try to play without him game 1, and if we lose, then he comes back, or if it's 2-2 and he comes back for game 5. Like, my concern is, I think we all understand to get to where you want to go, he has to be the Joel Embiid that was going to be an MVP candidate. And him sitting out games and you being like, let's see if we can rest him. When he gets back, you're not getting the same guy, right? I mean, you're dealing with the cardio problems, and is he in the same shape and all that stuff. That's what's kind of how managing this is such a weird situation.
See, I'm not as worried about that stuff as I was in the past, because I think he has taken a lot of steps to make sure that doesn't happen. We've talked about him getting the world-class nutritionist, taking better care of his body and all that. And a week, first of all, most of the team is going to be off for, they will have only played 1 game in between the time between game 1 and when Joel Embiid suffered the injury. So there's going to be a layoff for all of these guys, including the Hawks. The Hawks are going to have a layoff too. So there's going to maybe be a little rust all around in game 1, perhaps. But with Joel, I don't worry about those things nearly as much as I used to. I think they're going to do everything they can to make sure he's okay. I mean, Mike, the fact that he was out there, like you said, the fact that he's out there already practicing and shooting, it's not a game situation, but at least he can do that to keep the rhythm of his shot, to keep, his legs moving, to keep that. And the big thing is, Mike, when they talk about PT, physical therapy, it's going to be about strengthening all that area around. And the fact that he is arguably in the best shape of his career, that bodes well for that. He should be able to do that successfully. So, I don't worry. Like I said, I'll just, to reiterate, I don't feel, I'm not worried about that as much as I'm worried about, will he be able to do the mobility of the knee? Will he be able to do some of the things he did before? And as we talked about, 75% Joel Embiid, I will, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But of course, you'd rather the closer to 100% version is the guy that, you would have a much better shot of going where you want to get to with that version.
Get ready for a lot of pick and roll. Trae Young doing a lot of. You're going to see a lot of that. So that's what makes this team kind of a difficult matchup for Philadelphia. Obviously, it's so hard to kind of anticipate what's going to happen here. But if you have to play 4 or 5 games without him, what did you see in Game 5 that makes you feel like, okay, they did this, and therefore they should be all right if he doesn't play for 4 or 5 games?
The aggressiveness of Seth Curry, I think, was probably the biggest thing that made me kind of optimistic. And Atlanta does have some guards. Bogdanovich is an okay defender. He can get in the way, so that might be a little bit.
He always has games against Philly, man.
Bogdanovich, he's a pretty good player. Yeah, he's a pretty good player.
He's good. Yeah, I'm saying when he was in Indy, I feel like the Kings, right. I felt like he always just beat them up.
Yeah, no, he's a good player. He's a tough matchup for them. That's not going to be easy either. You figure he's probably going to get Seth Curry, and that's a matchup that Atlanta probably feels pretty good about. But yeah, my thing is I would be trying real hard with Seth Curry I would be a lot of pick and rolls. You saw what was good in Game 5 as well, that kind of 2-man game with Seth Curry and Tobias Harris. I'd be running a ton of that to try to get switches and try to get mismatches. I think that's your best bet. And I think credit to Doc Rivers and credit to his staff. I think the one thing that encouraged me, again, as that series went along, I thought he made adjustments. He wasn't afraid to play Tyrese Maxey because Tyrese Maxey gave him a boost. I think I don't know if you're going to see 11 guys in the second round, but what I liked about Doc Rivers is in the second half, he went with what worked. So if Tyrese Maxey had a good first half, he rolled with Tyrese Maxey. If Shake Milton or Furkan Korkmaz didn't play well in the first half, you didn't see him again in the second half. I think that's the kind of thing that bodes well for the Sixers. I think Doc Rivers, one thing I was concerned about with him, because I do think he's a great basketball coach, but we've seen in the past, sometimes he could be a little stubborn and a little rigid with his rotations and guys he wants to play. I thought the fact that he was willing to go small to start that game was huge, because I thought for sure, Mike, he was going to go Mike Scott or he was going to go Dwight Howard. I was almost certain that he would do that, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that he went Thibault. I thought that was the right move. If he chooses to do that again in game one, I would not be surprised. And like I said, that might be the most encouraging things, or the Seth Curry aggressiveness, the two-man game between he and Tobias Harris, and then Doc being willing to make changes and make adjustments.
All right, as we're having this conversation, the schedule has come out for this series, Paul, so I will break it to you. How about that? I'm breaking news to the news breaker. Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So it's not quite every other day, but for the moment. So it's Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, right. And the first game, 1 o'clock, of course, on 97.3, Tuesday, 7:30, Friday, 7:30. All those games are now national games, so you're going to get these 7:30 start times. So there you go. Brooklyn will be Saturday, Monday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for the other game, and I'm sure you'll get that same email.
Yeah, I'm sure. I probably already have it. I just haven't seen it yet.
All right, Paul, take care, pal.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, Paul Hudrick covering the 76ers, of course, at Paul Hudrick for 97.3 ESPN.com.